The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed in the podcast belong solely to the hosts and not the host's past, present, or future employers.
Hello everybody, this is Brian from Bringing Down Security. Little news flash here. We talked about the Palo Alto Level 10 vulnerability last night. We were doing on the 28th of June. Expected to ship on June 29th. That in fact happened. Just a little update. So it is a CVSS Level 10. It's a network attack vector. No privileges required. It does change the scope. The integrity impact is high. Attack complexity is low. No interaction for users. High confidentiality and availability impact as well. Description: when the SAML, and we talk about that later on in the show, authentication is enabled and the validate identity provider certificate option is disabled, improper verification of signatures in the SAML authentication enables an unauthenticated network-based attacker to access protected resources. The attacker must have network access to the vulnerable server to exploit this vulnerability. We talk a little bit about what SAML is, and to be fair, I did not want to post the podcast Sunday night before this came out because I wanted to make sure we had this in the discussion. So thank you all, and back to the show.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back. It's Brian and Mr. Betcher for Breaking Down Security.
How's it going?
Not too bad. Well, you've actually been doing pretty good. You've been on vacation for the last week or so.
Yeah, took a week off, went to the desert, did some hikes, stuff like that.
We talked about this with Miss Berlin last week. By the way, for those of you listening and wondering where she is, she's out in the middle of nowhere camping, is what she said. So it's awesome, and hope she enjoys her time out in the great outdoors. But we were talking about the fact that you love you some driving. You love taking them road trips. You've driven from Austin all the way up to Seattle and came and saw me, and then drove all the way back. You had a convoy, and you enjoy the driving. Is that because you just like seeing the land?
Yeah, I mean, I do like seeing how big things really are and how small we are by comparison. There's a lot of stuff out there, you know?
Yeah.
When you drive, you see it more. And, you know, when you take 2 weeks to do a bunch of different things, it's hard to take the stuff you need, like hiking gear, camping gear, things like that, you know, on a plane. So yeah, we end up driving and have a lot of fun.
And of course, there's just the logistical effort of dealing with things and COVID, flying and stuff like that. So I guess the driving is a lot easier. You can take more stuff, like you said, and you don't have to try to figure out, do I want to take the rain jacket or the sleeping bag or whatever. So you have more choices in terms of packing. So that makes sense.
Right.
Okay. So what did you just hiked? Was there anything interesting there in Big Bend?
Yeah, we did some hikes, took a lot of photos, of course, rafting, horseback riding, you know, for the kids and stuff, and just overall just visiting the park. You know, we tried to eat out at a couple of places. Some places we could. Some places were either shut down or at max capacity, so you had to eat outside. Well, if it's 105 outside, you really don't want to eat outside.
Right,
for lunch or whatnot. So sometimes we just had to fix a sandwich or something. So,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, I don't, I don't want to brag about the weather here, but it took us most of the day this weekend just to get up into the mid 60s. It was mid 60s Fahrenheit. That'd be about 17 C for those of you who are in the non-Fahrenheit regions. So yeah, I mean, it's been cool and rainy here, and I'm actually wanting it to get back up to somewhat warm levels so that I can go take jogs or whatever and stay healthy. So I've been walking a lot. Like, you've been hiking, which is probably a good 5-10 mile hike a day or whatever.
Well, not every day, but yeah, sometimes
Yeah.
we'll go on a 5 mile.
That's
Yeah.
not too bad. That's not too bad. Cool.
Right.
Well, so we're going to just do a little news again this week, Mr. Betcher. We've got some interviews coming up, hopefully. We actually did reach out to the folks we talked about last week with the Ripple 20 report, talking and getting some preliminary discussion with them. It's going to be one of those ones where we're going to be talking during the U.S. work day, so because they're in Israel. So hopefully we'll be able to get them on in the next couple of weeks here. So before we get started with the podcast, I wanted to again give a shout out. I did on Twitter a couple days ago, but I just wanted to give a shout out to Marcus Carey. Awesome guy. We've had him on the show more than once. Obviously, a great leader in the InfoSec space, and I appreciated all of his advice that he gave me during a very good phone call that I had with him about some items that came up on our Slack, which we'll tell you about after the show, about how to join the Slack if you're interested. So, all right, Mr. Betcher, let's get into the news here. See, HelpNet Security. Oh, no, we're not going to do that one. We're going to wait till Ms. Berlin comes back for that one. We may leave it in the show notes anyway. But so I found this one, Cognizant breach. So for those of you who do not know what a Cognizant is an IT services giant. We worked a little with them, Mr. Betcher and I, at a previous place. But they come in, their idea is, they make, they have a pool of people that can do the job that, most others either don't want to do, or they can, save money, or it's a cost cutting measure. But, they actually did reveal, according to eHacking News, that employee data was compromised by ransomware. So, Mr. Betcher, do you have any experience with what Maze ransomware is? Not trying to put you on the spot, but you're a ransomware person here, so.
Yeah, I don't think we've dealt with Maze ransomware. The thing you have to keep in mind with ransomware is that sometimes ransomware is actually a Trojan, so they can steal data. A lot of ransomware doesn't even care what your data is. They just want the ransom. Right, but sometimes the ransomware itself actually downloads a bunch of data first, or maybe they troll around your network at first, and the more sophisticated actors will install their malware on as many systems as they can, and then see what you have that may be valuable, whether it's PI data, healthcare data, credit card data, or whatever. They'll take that first, and then they'll set the bomb off, which will ransom everything they can after they've taken your data. So you have to be careful, and that's why HIPAA has actually a number of years ago said that if you have ransomware, that is considered basically your data is compromised until you prove otherwise. So the default is your data was stolen. Now you go prove that it wasn't, which puts the burden of proof on the company in order not to get not to be in violation of HIPAA and all the fines that may incur. So it's really important to have great logging and great security, so that if you do get ransomware, number one, you're more likely to prevent it or stop it. Number two, you could have the data there that says, no, our data didn't leave the company, and here's proof. I've got these firewall logs. I've got data size, volume logs. I've got the IP of the perpetrator, and it looks like we only exchange 2 kilobytes of data instead of 2 terabytes of data. That sort of thing will help out a lot in this case. So yeah, ransomware is not the entire story. In a lot of cases, you have to know and do, I guess, forensics or incident response on your endpoints or whatever was compromised to make sure that data was not stolen. Luckily, Windows 10, if you do have Windows 10, it has the System Utilization Resource Monitor, or SRUM database, which can tell you if you access that database on your machine. It has like a 90-day by default database of data that came and went, and it's categorized per process. So that's
very
good.
nice. Okay, very cool. So according to this, it started, they give you a little, so in e-hacking news, they give you a little background on what Cognizant is. It was started as a service provider done in Bradstreet, which is a company that deals with reputation type items. Threat actors involved carried out the attack between 9 and 11 April during the period of 3 days when the company was facing service disruptions. Let's see. While giving further insights in the security incident, they filed in their SEC. Based on the investigation to date, we believe the attack principally impacted some of our systems and data, resulted in unauthorized access to certain data and caused significant disruption. I thought there was some information about what was taken. Oh, yeah, here it is. Mined a considerable amount of unencrypted data, including credit card details, tax information or identification numbers, social security numbers, passport data, and driver's license information of employees. So there you go. So more good information that will be then used to steal and thieve identities. There was actually, I found a link to a nice little write-up at McAfee on exactly how Maze works in terms of ransomware types. Let me see. And then there's a FireEye article. All you have to do is do Google for Maze ransomware, and there's a lot of different things, including TTPs and items like that. So they tend to have like a wall of sheep. If you've ever been to DEF CON or Black Hat, they have the wall of sheep. So they tend to brag about owning companies on their website. And I think Cognizant is probably one of those. Let me see. Reconnaissance, Mandiant. This is from FireEye's blog. Observed a broad range of approaches to network host data and Active Directory reconnaissance across Maze incidents. Primary network reconnaissance was conducted using a bash script called 2.bat, which contained a series of NS lookup commands. Was copied into a file called 2.txt. Actor exfiltrated reconnaissance command output data and documents related to IT environment to an attacker-controlled FTP server. So you might want to look for things like outbound FTP connections. If you are watching your egress, then you should be able to see that. It was via an encoded PowerShell script. So that's kind of interesting. PowerSploit.
Yes, you should be looking for those encoded PowerShells.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you should definitely, if anything is using PowerShell and making outbound connections, that's probably a good indicator of compromise across the board, not with just specific types of ransomware in this case. So, actually, the FireEye blog post talking about the TTPs for that is very interesting, so it might be worth a read. I'll add that one to the show notes as well. Boink. There you go.
Yeah, it's always good to brush up on the latest malware by reading the reports and seeing what techniques they have, if there's anything new that pops up in the technique realm, and make sure that you're covered for that particular technique.
Yep. Yeah, especially if you're building out a detection mechanism, or you're just trying to find your way into the threat intel arena, and you don't necessarily have the wherewithal or the money to be able to do that. So those kind of blog posts are excellent.
And this is my opinion, so don't sue me. My opinion is that you should not, I guess, take wholeheartedly, or the only thing you do is threat intel, because a lot of the times the threat intel is false positive. I get a lot of threat intel alerts that are 5 years old, from a particular IP that's been recycled already,
Right.
things like that. But these particular techniques that they use, you kind of put kind of genericize what the IPs are and things like that. For example, the encoded PowerShell. How often do you have a legitimate PowerShell that uses base64 encoding? I can't think of one, unless they're published by Microsoft and they encode them somehow. But why would they do that? I don't know.
Yeah.
So it's always good to look for that encoded block. And it can be of a certain size too. Something, a large block of encoded PowerShell, usually that's bad.
Yeah.
And it would be
How would
better
you-
than just looking for IP addresses.
Yeah, but how would you detect base 64 encode? Are you just looking for a request that's extremely long? Are you looking for, are you looking for like an equal, which is what's normally at the end of a base 64 encoded string? How would you detect a base, assuming it's base 64 encoded? It could be encoded with anything, but how would you look for or detect an encoded web request?
Well, I have a query running, and it takes every PowerShell entry, which is basically the command is logged in the Windows logs. So if the command contains a certain number of characters of strictly base64 encoded characters, and I'm not looking for the equals or the equals, because you can either have a double equal, a single equal, or none at all. It's just a filler at the end.
Okay.
Right. So if you're looking for the double equal, you may not get it.
Right.
What I'm looking for is just the base 64 characters, and only those in a large block. If it's not encoded, you'll have things like parentheses, you'll have quotation marks, you'll have spaces in the regular blocks.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So, yeah, and then the PowerShell logs should decode them as well. But the fact that you have encoded in the logs, in addition to the decoded version, will tell you that you have encoded, and it's generally not a good thing.
Right. Right. Yeah, people aren't just going around encoding, there's got to be a good reason to be doing that. So, yeah, that makes sense. Right. Okay. Was any other last thoughts on that discussion there? Ransomware is pretty nasty, but if they don't pay it, it either gets dumped, or their machines are still down. Hopefully they've had backups. We keep harping on that. It's like, well, if they had backups, they wouldn't. It doesn't seem like it's all that easy for people to do backups these day and age. I'm not exactly sure why that is, but it's just
I don't know.
odd.
It used to be easy. You just do the Windows backup, right? Shadow.
Yeah.
But now that is easily removed, so you don't have that local backup. You have to do online backups, and
Right.
it's a lot of trouble to do backups. You have to have the infrastructure. You have to have the IT team that knows what they're doing and are on top of that, and then you have to test your backups. What if they're not backing up properly, or you think it's working and it's really not, and then your process to restore has to be there. I mean, how long does that take? Right?
Yeah.
Does it take a week because your offline backups are actually off-site and your network connection isn't that great and you have to ship it? I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
Right. So.
Yeah, when I was doing audits for healthcare, one of the requirements that HIPAA had was that you had to have offsite backups of your systems, not in a geographically in a geographically separate area. So if you were in, say, Seattle, geographically separate depends really on how far you want to go, but if they were in Portland, for instance, that may be better, but we had a couple of hospital systems when they were doing backups. They were like, oh, yeah, I just take the backups down to the safety deposit box at the bank. And I'm like, oh, yeah, how far away is that? Oh, it's a couple blocks. And I'm like, yeah, probably not a good place to put your backups. You might want to think about maybe putting them a little further away. And, yeah. And then, of course, the person I was talking to was like, oh, yeah, I do it on my way home. Sometimes I forget and I leave them in the car overnight. And I'm like, oh, that's why we have people who, end up in the news with, broken in their car, laptop stolen, data loss because of unencrypted laptops or unencrypted, files. I guess it's important to also encrypt your backups if you do have physical backups. That way your tapes are, if somebody does get a hold of the tapes, they are encrypted in some way. So
at the end, it says the impact to clients and their responses to the security incident have varied. So apparently they have some clients that were impacted, not sure how,
right,
or to what extent they were impacted. Maybe they just, maybe they didn't get ransomware or their data wasn't lost, but they just had to, they had a fire drill, right?
Yeah.
And,
yeah.
Cognizant is an IT outsourcing company. A lot of organizations do outsource certain branches of their IT teams. Mm-hmm. So that's one thing that they have to keep in mind is that whatever they outsource, those entities can have a security incident. And what do you do to not only separate yourself from that so that they can't jump from them to your company, but also what do you do in response to that? Do you have a plan in place in case the company you've outsourced to does get breached?
Yeah. Well, how many companies actually vet their vendors, or keep track of things like this? This happened in April. So if you're using Cognizant and, maybe you're not up on the news and, Cognizant had this breach, did Cognizant let you know in a certain amount of time, or is your IT guy seeing ehackingnews.com and going, oh, crap, okay, Cognizant just got breached, 3 months ago. So the article does say that they lost $50 to $70 million in revenue. I'm not exactly sure if that's in lost contracts or potential contracts or fees and fines. I'm sure that'd be in their SEC filing if they had any additional fines. But yeah, you're right about the what access those people have on Cognizant laptops or this says Maze ransomware, but I don't know if it's maybe it was on a company laptop. Does your company allow Cognizant to log in to via VPN to your company's machines? Maybe Cognizant wasn't the initial target potentially. Again, this is all conjecture on my part, so apologies. Hear the disclaimer at the beginning of the podcast, but this could have been a jumping off point to something else. They found out the attack was carried out between 9 and 11 April, but that's only when the ransomware let off. Like you said, they could have been in there for months looking around for things, creating additional persistence mechanisms or what have you. So there could be more stuff coming down the line.
Or downloading data. I mean,
right.
Did they have the defenses in place to detect that download of data if that happened? If not, then they would have only known potentially when systems were ransomed. Usually that's just the explosion at the end of the, the whole attack.
Mm-hmm. Well, the the other item is, it says they mined a considerable amount of unencrypted data, including credit card details, tax ID numbers, social security numbers. We mentioned all these before. Typically, this shows that the company is not encrypting their data, or this data should have been encrypted. Credit card numbers, passport data, all of that should have been in some kind of encrypted format instead of being plain text. So this could be, it could be an HR person, maybe an HR machine, somebody's HR machine, and they're just keeping that data locally on a big old spreadsheet somewhere. It doesn't say exactly how many employees got hit, but it was enough that they, that it made the news. But this is a lot of data that should have been encrypted. If it wasn't, then it definitely is now with the ransomware. So,
I had that part highlighted, that paragraph you just read.
Yeah.
The operators, which I'm assuming are the threat actors, mined, and I'm assuming when you mine something, you actually take it.
Right.
A considerable amount of unencrypted data, including credit card details. So if they were, if the credit card data, if that's true, if the credit card data, according to this article, was unencrypted, then, there might be some fines involved as well. And
that's true.
Loss of, PCI type privileges in that case, and the, what that entails, right? That entails audits, which are very costly.
Right. Yep. Yeah. Hopefully whoever got hit is getting their free year credit monitoring service. So, all right. Well, I think. Let me see one more story here. Let's see. Let's not bury the lead. So. I think we want to talk about the Palo Alto vulnerability. So if you have Palo Alto kit in your office or enterprise, you might want to take a look at vulnerability. I found out about this from Contact. So hopefully you've been made aware of this. If you haven't, we're recording this on the 28th of June. This is supposed to happen and come out on the 29th of June. So keep an eye out if it's after the 29th of June, 2020. The CVE numbered 2020-2021. So that's 2020-2021. I was told that they've been made aware of a serious issue with SAML on Palo Alto Networks PAN-OS. We strongly encourage our customers to upgrade to one of the following versions: PAN-OS 8.1.15, PAN-OS 9.0.9, or PAN-OS 9.1.3 and greater. So those are the ones you should upgrade to. They say this is a critical vulnerability in SAML. So the serious issue with SAML, the only mitigation being either to turn it off or upgrade to PAN-OS. So if you use SAML in your environment, which a lot of us are working from home, you probably are, and they say that the CVE will be released on Monday. So the number is low enough that Palo Alto has known about this for several months because I believe we're somewhere around the 12,000 range on our CVEs. So this one was found out fairly early, probably 3 to 4 months ago or better. So what is SAML? SAML, according to Wikipedia, this is where the uncomfortable pause. There we go. It's an open standard for exchanging authentication and authorization data between parties, in particular between an identity provider and a service provider. SAML is an XML-based markup language for security assertions, and assertions are statements that service providers use to make access control decisions. SAML is also a set of protocol message bindings and a set of profiles utilizing all of the above. It's also a set of XML-based protocol messages. Important use case SAML addresses is web browser single sign-on, relatively easy to accomplish within a security domain. So went to Palo Alto's site to see how they use SAML in their environment. SAML authentication for captive portal end users. There's a lot going on there. So when a user requests an application, the firewall evaluates authentication policy and redirects the user to an identity provider. Once the identity provider loads, the user enters their login credentials, and then the identity provider returns the SAML assertion, which, as we said, was an XML file telling the firewall that they're allowed to use that application and what commands and controls are in place. The firewall validates the assertion, and then the firewall evaluates security policy for access to the application. I can definitely see how this would be a problem. Wouldn't you, Mr. Betcher? If there's a critical issue, you can't just turn SAML off. So especially if you're using it to access remote applications. So that's not a good thing. It's not a good thing.
No, and typically if you have it turned on, then you've set it up because it has to talk to the identity provider. Right, through the user. It has to give them the identity provider, right?
Right.
So then the identity provider returns the assertion to the firewall.
Right.
So that has to all be set up. So in theory, you really can't just turn it off because somebody did set that up for a reason and deliberately.
Right.
I can't see a case where somebody has it on and just by accident.
Right. Yeah, so from a threat modeling point of view, if this is on PAN-OS, which would be the firewall, I'm guessing that there's some kind of issue with how it validates the SAML assertion potentially, or following the data flow that's in there. It's going to be either in the portion on step 1 where the user requests the application. But all that does is the user's just going to the firewall and saying, hey, I want to use HipChat.
I don't know exactly what it is. If you go to the CVE database, and this is today,
right,
the 28th
of June,
it says this candidate has been reserved by an organization or individual that will use it when announcing a new security problem.
Right.
So,
it's under embargo. They do that a lot. If you search for a lot of these, a lot of them will say reserved, and that's because they've reserved that number. It's not like they're trying to be CVE 0001, but they have to tie it to a specific number so that they can either make a write-up for it or what have you. So as a matter of fact, it was actually created before 2020 occurred. So this was on December of 2019 is when the entry was created. So they've known about this for almost 8 months, and it's taken this long to get this fixed. So it seems like this is going to be a fairly big deal when this goes down. So hopefully it'll be disclosed on the 29th of June. But so there's something here. The firewall validates the SAML assertion. I'm wondering if there's some kind of issue with the firewall, either parsing the SAML. Maybe there's an XML parsing issue there, where it would, give, maybe there's some kind of XML issue, parsing that. Step 6, according to the diagram, firewall evaluates security policy for access to application. Maybe there's a potential way of using the security policy to gain additional permissions to the application. Maybe, somebody can modify the XML in flight or something like that. So there's a lot of ways that this could go wrong. If this is a vulnerability that's kind of an issue. I don't imagine that the identity provider is in the wrong here. So, but there's a lot going on to that.
Yeah, and we have an image in the show notes that you can take a look at. It shows the workflow when it comes to SAML.
Yep.
And the reason they don't give this information, what'd you say, 6 months in advance, is because it gives attackers something to focus on. Oh, there's an issue in Palo Alto, which narrows it down to that particular firewall, and it's an issue with SAML, which narrows it down much, much further. Okay.
Right.
And so they can start evaluating how Palo Alto uses SAML and started trying to find this vulnerability on their own.
Right. Yeah.
The fact that it's been released now tells me that yes, they do have a fix, and that's going to come out. What'd you say, tomorrow?
supposedly tomorrow on the 29th of June. That's according to the information that I've been given. So, I can't find any.
A good test. Even if you don't have SAML implemented, maybe do ask your security admin if they can, if a critical vulnerability came out like this, how fast can they update it? You know.
Right. So there are similar CVEs from Palo Alto. If you go to 2020-1998, improper SAML SSO authorization of shared local users. This one was a 5.4. It's a medium. Improper authorization vulnerability in PAN-OS mistakenly uses the permissions of local Linux users instead of the intended SAML permissions of the account when the username is shared for purposes of SSO authentication. This can result in auth bypass and unintended resource access for the user. Considering they're calling this a critical, there's probably maybe code exec potentially. I would imagine if it's elevated permissions like this, then or the ability to use the permissions of local users to get past or get access to unintended resource access. I'm thinking if it's a critical issue, then there's going to be some RCE involved, maybe non-authenticated type stuff. So it'll be interesting to see what comes out of that. So yes, if you have Palo Alto stuff, reach out to Palo Alto, your account managers, whatever. Happy Monday. Sorry to drop that turd in your pool there, but yeah, it is what it is. So go and update all of your things. Get your maintenance window set up for this week, which is awful because it's going to be a short work week for most people here in the U.S. because the 4th of July is on a Saturday. So most companies will either take the 3rd off or the 6th off. So you're gonna have to fit your maintenance window in at some point. So anyway, so Mr. Betcher, any other thoughts, any suggestions, questions, issues, anything you want to bring up from a security point of view? It's your mic.
No.
Sounds fairly non-committal. Okay. All right. Well,
I'd like to talk about DLL hijacking. We got an article on that, and then some of the other articles that we have.
Well, let's talk about
a filler for this week. We talked a lot about these couple that we've done, but yeah, let's do that next time.
Okay. Cool.
DLL is a big deal. You see a lot of what you call fileless malware use DLLs. So yeah, let's get ready for that one. Okay.
All right. Well, if people wanted to talk to you about malware, especially ransomware or whatever, how would people get a hold of you, Mr. Betcher?
My Twitter account is @BetcherPwned, BOETTCHERPWNED, and I'm also at log-md.com.
Cool. Any incident response podcast coming out soon?
Yeah, I think so. We just recorded another one, not last week because I was on vacation, but the week prior.
Yeah.
So,
very nice.
So yeah.
Cool. And you can get that at log-md as well. You can get that at log-md as well. So, okay. Miss Berlin, of course, does a lot of great work in the community. She's one of the board members and founders of Mental Health Hackers, which, is becoming more prominent and more important as we all stay home for longer and have less user interaction. She has a network of people doing things on a regular basis, like weekly Zooms and teleconferences with folks to keep abreast of mental health issues. You can follow her on her Twitter at InfoSystir, INFOSYSTIR. She's also at Hackers Health. Her and Megan Roddy, both of them are also moderators on our Slack, which is great. If you are interested in joining that Slack, you'll be happy to know that we actually do enforce the social contract that happens. In the 3+ years that we've been operating, we've only had to get rid of 2 people ever in the Slack, because we do have moderation. We have a social contract. We expect a certain code of conduct to be to be done. It's a fairly professional environment. So if you are interested in joining us there, you can email us at bds.podcast@gmail.com, and or on our official Twitter at Breaksec, BRAKESEC. If you send us an email on our to the Gmail account, if you could just add something in the subject that says, Slack invite, please, or something like that, that would be great. That way I know what it is before I click on it and find out that it's somebody trying to sell me Slack, on actually more expensive Slack. We have I have a local meetup that isn't really local right now. It's called CSEC East. We're having a speaker on Wednesday night, which would be July 1st. If you catch this before then, you can go to our meetup page. If you go to CSEC East, SEASECEAST, and you can come and get on a Slack with us, or get in our Slack and join our Zoom, and hear somebody speak about security. I think we're going to be talking to somebody who spoke at Circle City Con. She's going to go through her talk on DevOps and how we can improve our DevOps standing there. So there's a lot going on with that discussion. We'll have some discussion on probably the Palo Alto vulnerability. Hopefully it will have dropped by then. So if you're interested, just do a search for CSEC East, or follow me on Twitter, CSEC East. I'm the organizer of that as well. So join that. If you get a last minute talk and you want to give a talk, we also have a slot that's available that on July 1st. So if you are interested in actually giving a talk, you just run it by me and we'll get you on. So let's see what else. TPub store. You can go get T-shirts or stickers or a coffee mug with the BreakSec logo on it, and you can give us some help and hosting fees and Zoom fees and stuff. Thank you very much to our patrons for all of their help, giving of themselves and making sure that the podcast helps offset some of the costs that we have with just running our community and using the Zoom and paying for Libsyn for hosting and all that. So we appreciate everybody who's helping out with that. If you're interested in doing that, there's a link in the show notes. If you'd like to, put a little something in our tip jar every month, that would be greatly appreciated. The podcast is always going to be free, but any way we can, offset costs is great. So let me think. Feedback is also helpful. Apple Podcasts, iTunes, Google Play Store, any of your favorite podcatchers and platforms that take feedback. We would love it if you could leave some feedback as well. If you don't have any of the filthy lucre to give us, that word of mouth is also very helpful. So tell your colleagues if you're looking for CPEs, for CISPs or CISA. It seems like it's more difficult now to get CPEs. I've seen some discussion on Twitter about ISC squared and how they're structuring their CPEs now. I also think you can get CPEs for your SANS certifications as well. So don't quote me on that one, but I'm fairly certain you can at least get some credits for that for your GIAC certs. If not, please feel free to tweet and tell me. So
makes sense.
Well, I've got two certs. I've got the 542 and the 504, and I have to figure out exactly how I'm going to submit my CPEs. There's a way to do it, but it seems very complicated and painful right now. So I'm going to have to, take some time to sit down and go, okay, how exactly do I, talk about what I do in my job if it requires me to write a report about what I do. I'm not exactly doing web application pen testing, but I talk about it quite a bit here on the show, and we do all kinds of stuff, and I don't even know if that counts for credits either. So I'd have to reach out to the SANS folks and find out what my options are. But I mean, the other option is to take yet another course. I'd probably just take the GCIH one again and get 36 credits or whatever, and be able to continue that. But that's fairly expensive, so it is what it is. All right. Well, I think that was it for this week on Breaking Down Security. We'll be. I don't think we're going to have a show next week because of the U.S. 4th of July holiday. So we will probably either take the week off or we'll record something maybe later this week and have it for broadcast at a later date. But hope everybody can get out, take some walks, start, working on their mental health if they're having issues. Don't hesitate to reach out to us. We do have a mental health channel on our Slack if you, need somebody to talk to, don't hesitate to reach out and send us a DM, and we can get on with you. We can, talk and discuss. We're all going through, anxiety and issues with what's going on in the greater world right now. So, you got to take care of yourself because, like we always say here, you're the only you have. Try to be kind to one another. Be careful out there. Donate to a worthwhile charity, and have a good week. It's a nice short week, so talk to you again real soon.
Bye-bye.